Welcome. We as a whole are familiar with stories of assumed hauntings after private misfortunes, the abandoned lady of the hour showing up in her wedding dress despite the fact that she hurled herself out of a window 100 years prior, the casualty attempting to impart their pain 30 years after their murder. But what of occasions that influenced hundreds, if not thousands, of individuals, including the individuals who endure? Fiascos that individuals everywhere on the world regularly watch unfurl? Here is an assortment of paranormal events that have been accounted for in association with such horrible misfortunes. 10 Ghost Passengers of Japan. In the years since the 2011 Tohoku tidal wave that cost more than 16,000 lives, cabbies in a portion of the most noticeably awful hit towns, for example, Ishinomaki, are revealing that they are getting phantom travelers. Yukakudo, an understudy of humanism at the Tohoku Gakuen University, has talked with in excess of 100 drivers as a component of the exploration for her graduation theory. The entirety of the drivers met accepted they were getting a genuine individual. They began their meters, and some prominent their encounters in logbooks. One of the men met asserted that a couple of months after the debacle he got a young lady who requested to be taken to the Minamiyama region. He disclosed to her that there was nothing left there. The cabbie proceeded to relate that the traveler at that point asked, "Have I kicked the bucket?" and that when he went to take a gander at her, she was gone. Another driver portrayed how he had driven a youngster in his 20s to an aspect of the city, mentioned however that when he showed up got himself out of nowhere alone. Strangely, the entirety of the spooky travelers were portrayed as youthful, and Miss Kuto accepts that youngsters feel unequivocally chagrined at their deaths, when they can't meet their loved ones, and, as they need to pass on their harshness, they may have picked taxis as a medium to do so. None of the drivers detailed inclination dread at these encounters. 1. Yukakudo herself expressed, "Through the meetings, I discovered that the passing of every casualty conveys significance. I need to pass on that." 9. What's more, of Thailand apparition travelers are not simply limited to Japan. After the torrent brought about by the Indian Ocean seismic tremor on Boxing Day 2004, the inhabitants along the Andaman coast, Thailand, begun to report being spooky by a portion of the 230,000 casualties who were cleared to their deaths. Nearly 14 days after the misfortune, Lek, a tuk-tuk minivan driver, depicted 7 unfamiliar travelers who moved into his van and requested to be taken to Kata Beach for 200 baht. However, in the wake of driving for some time, Lex said he felt his body become numb and, glancing around, got himself alone in the vehicle. However, dissimilar to the Japanese cab drivers who felt no dread at these spirits, Lex states, "I can't get over this. I must land another position. I have a girl to help, however I am too terrified to even think about going out driving at night." Other local people were also scared by specters meandering around their locale. A safety officer who worked in a lodging that was the location of numerous setbacks left his post soon after the catastrophe, professing to hear the shouts of a lady accepted to be a visitor who was killed. And in Kalak, a family said that their telephone continually rang, yet when the collector was lifted everything they could hear were the calls of their family members asking to be protected from the crematorium flares. 8. Titanic Premonition. There have been numerous articles bringing up the apparently spooky expectation of the destiny of the Titanic as books which reflect numerous subtleties of the boat and its excursion. Yet, maybe very few individuals understand that the chief of the liner, Edward J. Smith himself, additionally appeared to have a feeling that all would not work out positively on the first trip over the Atlantic. In an assortment of his letters, which were sold in 2016, he mourns the reality he was done assuming responsibility for the Kimrick, another boat, and rather positioned as skipper of the Titanic. More unpropitious is a letter to his sister composed only 2 days before the liner hit the ice shelf, wherein he states, "I actually don't care for this boat. I have an eccentric inclination about it. Captain Smith was a profoundly experienced sailor who had as of late been on the Titanic's sister transport, the Olympic, when she was engaged with an impact, yet he didn't have anything however affectionate affections for that specific vessel. 3. Why at that point, did he feel so uncomfortable with a boat he had just barely walked on? Whatever the explanation, interest has kept on encompassing the destined commander from that point onward. Numerous stories have jumped up around him, including the account of Second Officer Leonard Bishop of the SS Winter Haven, who, in 1977, was leading a visit through his boat to one of his travelers. This traveler was a calm, mindful man with a British articulation. At that point, Bishop felt there was something abnormal about the man, however couldn't state precisely what it was. A couple of years after the fact, he ran over an image of a commander of a boat and shouted, "I realize that man, I gave him a visit through my boat." The man in the photo was Captain Edward J. Smith. 7. Spirit of the Somme. By the finish of the Clash of the Somme, which kept going 4.5 months, more than 1 million men had been killed or injured. In spite of the fact that you may anticipate that this thing should contain a frequenting by one of these fallen, curiously, it was somebody who never set foot on the milestone who made a spooky appearance. On the morning of November 5, 1915, 13 days before the second most lethal fight in history was finished, the troopers of the British 2nd Battalion of the Suffolk Regiment saw something strange. As of now, the German powers had started to fire adjusts onto their channels, yet this was not the striking thing that Captain W. E. Newcomb expounded on in the August 1919 release of Pearson's magazine. He depicted how he by and by saw a splendid white light appear to ascend from the sloppy strip between the two channels known as a dead zone. He proceeded to portray how this light changed into the figure of a man wearing a marginally obsolete military uniform. The man was immediately perceived as being Lord Kitchener, whose face had been put on the map by the great many British enrollment banners in which he looked and pointed legitimately at the watcher and expressed "Your nation needs you." Except that Lord Kitchener had passed on in June of that year, a month prior to the skirmish of the Somme commenced. British flares were let off, however they didn't disperse the figure that continued to walk corresponding to the channels in a way that proposed he was reviewing his soldiers. He at that point turned his face to the German side, that had additionally observed the apparition, and they stopped their fire trying to comprehend what they were seeing. Nonetheless, seeing the flares, the British artillery units some separation off comprehended their help was required and started to discharge shells on the German soldiers, who again started their flooding guard. In the disorder, the figure got back to any place it had originated from. 6. Missed connections. The inhabitants living close to O'Hare International Airport, Chicago, have frequently revealed accepting weird guests at their homes. On hearing thumping on their entryways, they have addressed them to discover somebody remaining close to home, clarifying that they need to make an association or discover their baggage. Before the property holders can ask further, the individual vanishes. On the expressway close by, abnormal lights have been seen by drivers alongside unexplained figures meandering along the side of the road. If you somehow manage to invest some energy at the air terminal itself, you may feel an unexpected drop in temperature joined by shouts originating from a neighboring field. These marvels have been ascribed to a staggering accident that occurred in May 1979 when an American Airlines McDonnell Douglas DC-10, Flight 191, slammed soon after takeoff because of one of its motors tumbling off. With its fuel tanks full, the plane was devoured in a fireball. Each of the 271 individuals ready and 2 individuals on the ground were murdered. The paranormal movement proceeds right up till today, and in the event that you are sufficiently daring to look for direct insight of it, at that point a nearby organization offers apparition visits where you can stay outdoors close to the air terminal for a night. 5. The Butterfly People of Joplin. The numerous accounts of the Butterfly People of Joplin are very comparable. A parent or grandparent and youngster are gotten out in the open when the EF5 cyclone hits on May 22, 2011. They have an ideal opportunity to discover a spot to shield. As the twister hunkers down on them, lifting up vehicles and structures and flinging these articles around them, the grown-ups accept it's absolutely impossible they will endure, they will pass on. But at that point, supernaturally, the tempest passes, and they are left solid. The kid at that point gazes toward the grown-up and inquires. Is it safe to say that they weren't beautiful? Weren't what lovely? The grown-up inquires. Didn't you see the butterfly people? Soon, the tale of these butterfly people shielding occupants from the cyclone spread about the town. They were partaken in the road, in chapel lessons, and youngsters accepting guiding for the injury they endured started asserting that they also had seen these radiant creatures that kept them protected and support them during the fiasco. At the point when a wall painting was revealed in downtown Joplin to respect the town and what it had encountered, the craftsmanship portrayed huge, beautiful butterflies. Despite the fact that the aesthetic head of the wall painting venture, Dave Lowenstein, was quick to push that butterflies have numerous emblematic implications, others in the town felt emphatically that there was an association between the pictures and the heavenly encounters of the townsfolk. Indeed, even on the painting, said one occupant. There's butterflies since they've known about the butterfly people. For haunted from below when the London Underground was first proposed during the 19th century. There were genuine feelings of trepidation among a few. The nurse of 9/11 understandably, the size of the monstrosities completed on September 11 has brought about numerous individuals approaching guaranteeing they encountered spooky ghosts during and after the assault. Numerous survivors guarantee they were directed to well-being by undetectable existences. One such observer expressed that on going to a massive fire they were goaded through and hence guided down the steps of the North Tower. Another survivor, having been caught underneath concrete, depicts being visited by an ameliorating spirit dressed as a monk. Stranger actually, are the marvels that are seen by more than one individual. One such locating was seen by Night Cop Sergeant Forthcoming Mora who filtered through the trash in the days after the assault. He reports seeing a lady wearing a World War II Red Cross uniform conveying a plate of sandwiches. He guarantees he trusted her to be a specialist on call and didn't see her simply the once, he saw her a couple of times where she remained around 50 yards away. However, there was no doubt as far as he can say that she gave off an impression of being a genuine individual. This is sufficiently frightening if not for an experienced Sergeant Mara had a year later with a resigned wrongdoing scene investigator. At this point Mara had put the experience of the abnormal lady to the rear of his brain until the criminologist happened to ask him whether he had heard the tales about the old Red Cross specialist attempting to serve sandwiches and espresso out by the sifters. It was then that Mara acknowledged he wasn't the just one to detect this baffling figure. 8. And since nobody has approached professing to be her, or to know her, she stays a secret. 2 Loft and Repo at roughly 11:42 p.m. on December 29, 1972, Eastern Airlines Flight 401 collided with the Florida Everglades. It appeared to be that presently before the accident the flight group saw that an arrival gear pointer light had stopped to work and keeping in mind that they were worried about this, neglected to see that the autopilot had exchanged modes. Without staying alert until it was past the point of no return, the airplane started to gradually lose height until it smashed. 75 individuals injured while 101 died. Included among the dead were Captain Bob Loft and flight engineer Don Repo. It was these two men who before long started showing up on other Eastern TriStars, specifically, those fitted with parts rescued from the destruction of their smashed plane. A considerable lot of the sightings were made by more than one observer on the double, including the time that a flight skipper and 2 airline stewards saw and addressed the late Captain Loft before seeing him disappear. They were shaken to such an extent that they dropped the flight. Indeed, even the VP of Eastern Airlines revealed having a discussion with a man he accepted that was the captain of the trip before acknowledging it was the as of late perished Loft. As for flight engineer Repo, it appears to be his nebulous vision took significant consideration after his passing in ensuring the planes were satisfactorily kept up. One flight engineer part of the way through pre-flight checks claims Repo showed up and stated, "You don't have to stress over the pre-flight, I've just done it." An airline steward portrayed seeing Repo fixing a cookroom stove, while a different airline steward saw Repo's face show up in the broiler of TriStar 318. At the point when she got two partners, every one of the three heard Repo state, "Look out for fire on this plane." Intriguingly, the plane later proceeded to encounter motor issues, and the last leg of its excursion was dropped. Repo likewise appeared to a chief on another flight and let him know there will never be another accident. "We won't let it occur," driving some to address whether it was blame at their dangerous mistake that prompted their rehashed signs. One living dead when Sorpong Pia was 17, he saw his dad Nam, an administration official, being constrained into a blue truck and removed in his local Cambodia. This happened in obscurity years somewhere in the range of 1975 and 1979, during which it is assessed that 1.7 million individuals were killed by the Khmer Rouge drove by Pol Pot. Since that time 309 mass grave destinations with an expected 19,000 grave pits have been uncovered. So it is reasonable that when Nam didn't restore, Sorpong could just accept his dad was one of the victims. Sorpong and his family were a portion of the fortunate ones. In the wake of making it to an evacuee camp in Thailand, Sorpong, his mom, and 6 kin all moved to Canada in 1982, where Sorpong would proceed to have a recognized scholastic vocation. Quick forward to January 2010 and Sorpong is in Tokyo, where he has a clear dream wherein he strolls and talks with his dad. Albeit moved by the fantasy, he thought it close to an indication of the amount he actually missed his dad. He was unconscious that one of his siblings was wanting to visit a mystic in Ottawa, wanting for counsel with respect to his business. During the perusing, the mystic inquired where his dad was, asking, "Did you see him?" The sibling clarified that he had seen his dad removed when he was 5 and that he had been killed. Yet, the clairvoyant educated him this was not the situation. Nam was all the while alive. Doubting the mystic's data, however interested, Sorpong's sibling educated the rest regarding the family. This prompted their sister, who was distrustful, choosing to counsel the clairvoyant without uncovering what her identity was. The mystic additionally educated her that her dad was alive. At the point when the kin's mom met with her, the clairvoyant uncovered a similar data. So there followed 2 outings by one of Sorpong's sibling to Cambodia to check whether he could find the man they accepted had been slaughtered very nearly 30 years prior. He appropriated several banners of Nam's he had looked 40 years sooner. He scoured Thai border towns and the destinations of previous displaced person camps until he was at long last coordinated to a man who said he had seemed as though the photo on the flyers when he was more youthful. In any case, in no way different, he would not accept that the Canadian could be one of his children. There was question on his child's side as well, yet gradually, as Nam Pao related stories and transferred data about the family that no one but he might have realized, it appeared father and child had been reunited. But how had Nam gotten away? He had in reality been removed in the truck and was tossed into a jettison and bodies were heaped on head of him. Some way or another he endured just to be recovered and tormented before getting away into the wilderness and to the Thai-Cambodia outskirt, where he accepted his family had not been as blessed as he and had been slaughtered. Since that time he had remarried and had 6 additional kids, yet on hearing that her now 85-year-old spouse was alive, his first wife, Sorpong's mom, moved back to Cambodia to be with him and his new family. She was followed quickly by one of their children who opened a fish eatery and now thinks about them all. At long last, Sorpong himself got back to the nation and was brought together with the dad he had last observed 36 years before. 10 Chloe Feinleiter lives in England and likes everything abnormal and unexplained, except if it has to do with where she left her keys. She will attempt to give you instances of strangeness at whatever point she can. Thank you. Strangeness at whatever point she can. Thank you. Strangeness at whatever point she can. Thank you.